Fine. So we have completed the basic part of the OS where we have written some commands code, as well as we have also implemented inter-process communication in various ways, right? So today we are going to start with the process synchronization part, right? So at least around 2 to 3 labs will be focusing on different problems, right, for the semaphores. So that is why I won't be giving you the lab manuals, right, for these labs, because already we have seen that in class, right? I will discuss the concepts, right, and according to that, I will give you the aims, right? So as per the normal labs, we will proceed. Okay. So for this purpose, let us first look at a simple code. I am sharing my screen with you, right, and try to find out what is the problem with that kind of code. Okay, can you all see the screen and the code? Okay, so we have already seen and written the programs using threads, right? So let us first refresh that before we go into this code. So we create threads using POSIX thread library, right? The library name is POSIX, right? And using POSIX thread library, we can have support of a number of functions, right? The first function that we use is pthread create, right? And the second function that we did use is pthread join. Okay. So do you remember what are the arguments of pthread create? What is the first argument that we are passing? Yes. What is the first argument? It is address of the thread. That's correct, right? And thread is declared either inside the main function, or you can even declare the thread as a global variable, right? That depends upon the scope which you want to apply. Okay. What is the second argument of pthread create? Yes. It is a structure, right? And that defines thread attributes. Yes, scheduling algorithm is a part of that. Chindu, that's correct. So basically, you can set a number of values, right, as attributes of the thread functions, right? One of them is scheduling algorithm, right? But as usual, in most of the programs, as I discussed earlier, we go with null, right? So null means what in this situation? Yes, what does null signify? Yes, we go with default parameters. That's correct. We go with defaults. Okay. And the third argument is what? It is a function, right? Basically, it is address of the function, right? But when we are using function, right, and we want to pass the address, we don't write the ampersand in C, right? So basically, you are passing the address of the function over here, right? What is the last argument? It is argument, right? And do you remember the rule of argument? How many arguments you can pass? What is the rule? Yes, only one. Exactly. And if you want to pass multiple arguments, what is the option you have? Yes, either go with structure or any other data structure that can give you package, right? Okay, mostly we use structure. Good that you remember. Fine. So now regarding the argument type, right? It always accepts which kind of argument? It is a void pointer, right? So whatever argument you are passing, you have to first typecast that into a void pointer before passing, okay? And then whenever the function receives that argument, again, what you need to do, if you consider this process as upcasting, right, then you will have to do downcasting, right, within the function. Remember that process, all of you? Because see, producer consumer problem or any other problem, let us say reader writer or any other, can be implemented using threads, and that's what we are going to do. We are not going to create two different processes. That can also be done, but as we have studied POSIX threads, we will stick to that, right, for the lab session. Okay. So let us now focus on the code, right? And yes, what about join function? What is the goal of join function? Yes, same as wait in fork, right? So join will make your uh, thread wait, right, until the function returns. Until the function returns. Okay. So now let us observe the program, right? There is an array of 5 threads, right? There is an array of 5 threads, and then we are creating the threads again in a for loop, right? And you are terminating that within the other for loop, right? So in this situation, if I place join after create, let us say if I am not having the second for loop, okay, and if I am placing the join just after the create function, what will be the difference? Let us start with that. Yes, it will be sequential execution. Okay, anyone else would like to give the answer? I am not using the second for loop, right? I am putting create and join together. And again, we are creating 5 threads, right? So what will be happening inside or within the logic is first thread will be created. Yes, until first thread is completed. After that, new thread is created. That's correct, Priyank. Overhead, nothing happens, nothing difference. Okay. Okay, so I can see there are two kinds of answers. Let me go in detail. So pthread create will just create the thread, right? And then the control passes to the threaded function. Yes or no? After we create the thread, the control goes to the threaded function, right? That is the concept we have. Okay. Now, until what you will be waiting, that depends upon the join, right? So basically, if join is not placed, what may happen in worst case? Yes, you might have seen that earlier when we programmed threads in lab number 4, I think. That was the lab before the first sessional exam. This lab we are having before the second sessional exam. So if you are not joining, then it is possible that whatever computation the thread function is doing, that will be lost because you are not waiting, right? So it is possible that your main will terminate immediately, right? As you are not waiting, main will proceed with the remaining lines. And what if there is no other line, right? After create, your main terminates. So in that case, although your thread might be doing some complex execution, right? But whatever it has done will be wasted. Are you getting the point? Right? So this is an important part. Join is a compulsory, you can say, thing in case of threaded programs, right? And the second thing is the position of join matters. Position of join matters, right? So let us take that scenario which I gave you. I'm writing create for thread 1 and then join for thread 1. So what that will do is thread will be created, function will be called, okay? Function will return, right? So until the function returns, you will be waiting. Yes or no? Until the first thread returns, you will be waiting. Okay. And then the for loop index increments, right? So second thread will be executing. So that's correct that it will be a sequential execution. So if you are writing that program, are you going to get any other benefit? Not much benefit, right? Only benefit that you have is there is less overhead in threads. We have studied that, right? There is less overhead for creation, less overhead for termination, right? All those things we have studied. Okay. Time and space might be saved, right? That's what we can say. So ideally, what is the way to write? If I'm using two separate for loops, right, for creation as well as for joining, what this will do, right? Suppose you are having a for loop of 5 threads like this. So this will create a thread pool, of 5 threads. This will create a thread pool of 5 threads, and then they can be dispatched based on decision of the dispatcher. Yes or no? We are trying to create a thread pool, right? And if we are having, you can say, concurrent execution possible, if you have the supported hardware, then that code will be able to take advantage. Agreed? If you are decoupling create from join, right, you will have an advantage of multi-threading actually, right, as well as concurrent processing if your hardware supports again, right? Okay. So now observe this remaining part of the code. You are given a global variable, right? We started this second sessional phase with an example that wherever the processes or threads are sharing global variables, there are problems, right? What are the problems that we face? Yes, overwriting, right? Overwriting is one thing that happens, right? What else? If you want synchronization, again, that won't be possible, right? Because who is going to decide the dispatch order? It is ultimately your dispatcher, right? So it is not in our hands, right? As far as the dispatching, as well as the protection of the value is not guaranteed, right? Overwriting can definitely happen, fine. So in this code, is there any problem? Try to observe now. I just want to format my output within greater than and less than sign so that my output looks proper, right? And there are 3 separate printf statements. I have actually written them like this so that you can understand the problem that might happen. Yes? Can anyone tell me what is the issue? Okay, count is global, right? That's correct. So what might be the issue due to that? And I'm not using synchronization or neither any kind of locking is there in this code, right? You can observe that it is a simple code. Okay, so as count is global, what are the possible problems? Try to list that in the chat box. 2 threads access the count at the same time. That's correct. If count is plus plus in first call, switch to printf. Yes, yes, switching between lines is possible. That's a very valid point, right? Incorrect count at the end, yes, that's what we can say as a summary, right? If first thread, yes, that's correct, right? So all 4 answers, if I combine, I can find 2 common answers, right? The first is both the threads are writing at the same time. Okay, so in that case, actually we wanted the count to be incremented by 2, but it will be incremented by 1 only, right? So the final answer will be incorrect, right? Another is, as there are multiple statements, right? What if your threads get switched from one to the other in between, right? So after printing the first greater than sign, right, the second thread runs, and assume that the second thread runs completely, right? So remaining part of the first thread will be printed in a garbled manner, right? So actually you won't be able to format your output in a proper way, right? So over here we use join, so at one time one thread is running. Yes, in this program it won't be a problem, Priyank, agreed, right? But we should think about concurrency, right? Always. So we should try to write such a code which will even work on parallel computers, right? So that is what we are discussing over here, right? So if you want to write that generalized code, right? So basically we need some kind of protection, right? Synchronization is required, as Keval is written, as well as uh, do we need any other requirement over here? Mutual exclusion kind of thing, is it required? Think about that situation. Okay, okay. Yes, wherever there is a shared resource, we can say exactly, right? Yes, for count. Okay. So now the second question is, in this program, we need to locate the critical section, right? So where is the critical section present? Okay, count plus plus. Anyone else has a different opinion? Only one line, count plus plus, or 1, 2, 3. Okay. Generally is written 1, 2, 3. Fine. Whole function. Okay. One more response. Okay. Anyone else? Just think an answer. See, as I told you, you might be given unknown programs, right? If you are having a competitive examination, if you are appearing for competitive examinations, and from that you have to find out what is your critical section, and then you need to find out a solution. And that's how the process goes. So yes, Shail has also answered whole function. Okay. So the answer is again whole function. Why so? Right? Because if you protect only count plus plus, yes, the count will be properly implemented. I agree with that. But what about format of the output? Right? Output still can be in wrong format or it may be mixed. All of you agree? Those who have answered count plus plus as the question's answer? Yes, right? So basically, our critical section is the entire function, right? I need to lock the entire function, right? So what does that mean? Whenever one thread is inside the function, any of the other thread cannot enter, right? So while doing that, we are going to lose the concurrency advantage. Yes or no? We are going to lose the concurrency advantage, but that is required. That is required in this situation, right? So that is a trade-off, right? If you want to provide locking mechanism, yes, you might not be able to run parallel threads, right? But if you don't do that, there can be worse effects. Agreed? Right? So in any of the problems that you are facing, first thing is you have to find out where the critical section is, right? And the second thing is you should know how to protect that. Okay? And what are the ways to protect the critical sections? Yes, which are the different ways? Yes, you can go with semaphore, you can try with monitors, right? You can even do that with message passing. Right? We have studied all three approaches, but semaphores is by far most used notation, right? And that is why you will see all the problems and their solutions given using semaphores. Right? If you try to search even online, right, you will find the first solution that is given by semaphores only, right? Because that is very you can say easy to use as well, right? You don't need to remember the syntax, special syntax like monitors, because in monitors, as you remember, we have to declare a block separately, and inside the block you can declare your variables at the end only, right? So there is a structure we need to follow. Okay. Rather than that, in semaphores we just have to call the functions. That's it, and the functions will do the job, right? Okay. So I'm stopping the screen share for a while now, and then we'll discuss the remaining topics. So in this program, we have seen what are the possible problems, right? And the solution is semaphore. Okay. So the question is how to solve this problem using semaphores. Okay. So the first function for that, which you need to refer again, is sem underscore init. Go through the main page of this for a while, then we will resume discussion, right? This is a function used for initializing semaphores. Right. Again, like POSIX thread library, we are having separate semaphore.h header file, which declares all these definitions, right? And it gives us three functions. So we are starting with the first one, okay, sem underscore init. Go through the main page of this. Is it in the entry of 3 or 2? Can you just let me know? It is manual 3 or manual 2? It is 3, right? So that means it is a library function. But library is this time semaphore library. Semaphore.h is the header file that controls it. Okay. So go through it for 5 minutes, then we'll resume. Okay. Study the syntax and think about how we can call this function, right, in a proper syntax manner. Okay. We'll resume after 5 minutes. Okay. Till that, you can go through it. Okay, so my first question is how you will initialize a semaphore, right? How did you find that? Write that syntax in the chat. You have gone through that. Just declaration. Okay, let us forget about initialization. Just declaration. How you will declare a semaphore variable? Through value argument. Okay. Declare one semaphore in the chat so that I can know whether you understood or not. Sem underscore t, sem underscore t, sem1. Okay, good. Anyone else would like to try? Yes, that is sem init. That is initialization. Yes, so if you want to declare a semaphore, it is like this only, sem underscore t, right? And you need to declare, suppose sem1 is my variable, right? So that's how we declare it. Okay. Now, the second question is, what is sem underscore t, right? So have you found anything regarding that? Like pthread underscore t was a structure. Remember the concept? Pthread underscore t was a structure. Similarly, sem underscore t is also a structure, right? And we are declaring a structure reference basically. Right? We are declaring a structure reference in this situation. Okay. Now let us discuss the parameters of sem init, right? So what is the first value you need to pass? It is a reference, right? It is a reference to semaphore, right? That's correct, right? And the second parameter is important, right? The second parameter is named as a p shared, right? There is a reason behind this p over here, right? If the value is 0, what does that mean? The semaphore is shared between threads of same process, right? We have seen that diagram, right? There is a box, inside that you have some worms, right? So that is one process has multiple threads, right? And yes, it is process shared. That's correct, right? So that is the meaning behind this naming convention, right? If it is any value greater than 0, that defines the number of processes that are sharing that particular semaphore, right? So as I said, right now we are going to work with thread library, right? So what will be the value we'll keep? If you assume that producer and consumer are created as threads, then the value has to be 0. That's correct, right? So we'll go with 0 as the argument. Now the third value, right? What is that? That is the value of the semaphore, right? In the pseudocode, we were writing just like that. Semaphore s is equal to 5, right? But we can't do that in program, right? For program, you have to call this function. Okay, that's why I told you when we discuss the concept that when we will implement, we will discuss the details, right? So that is the general syntax that we need to use. So can anyone write that syntax? If you want to declare a semaphore with initial value 5 and it is shared between threads only, threads of the same process. Semaphore name is sem1, right? Yes, that's correct. It is ampersand sem1, right? Because it is a address. It is expecting an address, right? So it is ampersand sem1, comma 0, comma 5. That is initial value. That's correct, right? So are you clear with this first function? Okay. And what does it return? Have you looked at that behavior? It returns 0 in case of success. That means if semaphore is properly allocated, that is, it is having properly allocated memory and everything, right, then it will return 0, right? But if there are any other issues like memory allocation or permission issues, right, it will get -1, right? Okay. Mostly it does not happen, right? But as a programmer, we should always take care of errors, right? So that's why we should always go with the error handling part, right? Yes, we are not going to handle that error or exception, but you can just print an error message. Okay, fine. So this is initialization part. Still, what are the other functions we require so that we can solve? We need the wait and signal, right? We need wait and signal. Okay, so that was in pseudocode. Over here, we have a same wait function. But before that, let us refresh those concepts. Right? How same wait works for generic semaphores? Yes. How same wait works for generic semaphores? Can you write that pseudocode in the chat? That will be a good revision as well, right, for the examination. You can just write if and else, right? Simple if else. I don't need the entire logic. It decrements, that is first thing. What else? If it falls less than 0, yes. If the value becomes negative, that process or thread will be blocked. That's correct. Very good, right? So that is same wait function. Okay. What about binary semaphores? What is the difference between generic and binary? Try to write that difference in chat in short again. Generic means it can take any value, right? It can go up to maximum integer, let us say. That is also possible. It will decrement, and if, okay, it actually does not decrement, right? In binary semaphore, decrement does not happen, right? It is just 0 and 1. So what you check, is current value 0? Then block. If it is 1, make it 0. Right? Yes. If it is 1, make it 0. Otherwise, block the process. Right? So that is the logic we have in the same wait B. Right? Now over here, semaphore.h library gives you generic semaphores. Right? If you want to use a binary semaphores option, for that we have another, you can say, specialized function, or you can say a variable that is called mutex. Right? Mutex is a binary semaphore, right? But it is having a special meaning, right? The full name is, as you can predict, it is mutual exclusion, right? But the difference between mutex versus semaphores is what? In case of mutex, the process which locks the mutex should be the same process to unlock it. I'm repeating, the process which sets the lock on critical section, right? The unlock can also be done by using the same process, right? So that is a special behavior, right? In case of semaphore, what happens? To take example of any kind of semaphore, binary or generic, can one process block the, you can say unblock the other one, like we do in producer consumer? Yes, I hope you are getting my point, right? Your semaphore is actually shared, right, between processes or threads, right? So suppose producer is doing same wait on one variable, let us say s, right? Can consumer increment that count using same signal of s? That is possible. In case of semaphore, that is possible, right? But in case of not at the same time, that is correct, but it is possible, right? But in case of mutex, right, it has to be the same process or same thread. Okay, so it is actually a more stricter version, right? And it is not used that often because it is not going to give you advantage. But yes, in the program that we saw, can we write that code using mutex without using semaphores? We are just having one global variable and we want to protect the access to that global variable, right? So in that case, it is possible because you are not having multiple processes sharing the buffer or something kind of that, right? So for smaller problems, mutex is sufficient. But for large scale problems, we usually opt for semaphores. Okay. So that is one more difference you should know. Mutex versus any kind of semaphore. Let us say binary, or you can say generic. Mutex requires the same process to lock as well as unlock, while in case of semaphore, any process can do lock and unlock. Okay. So that one concept I left for the lab session so that you can understand the details. Now, let us go in the main page of same wait. Right? I'm giving you around 3 to 4 minutes. You can quickly read it. Right? Then let us resume. Okay, so go to manual page of SAM underscore wait function. And just read out how that function works. We have already seen the logic. The same logic is written over there in the main page. Right? So we are not going to write the program using mutex, right? Because our focus is on semaphore. But I just gave you that concept, right? So that even in examinations, or you can say in competitive examinations, they might be asking you this difference. So you should be knowing the basics. So is it matching with the concept that we studied, right? If the value is greater than 0, then what happens? It will just decrement, right? And it will go ahead, right? Otherwise, it will block, right? Until what? Until it is possible to decrement. That means until it again becomes positive. That is another way of writing the manual, right? So we have seen the generic concept. The manual writers have written them from programming perspective, right? So you can easily map that out. It is generic semaphore again, right? Because you can initialize that semaphore with any positive value. So this concept is a generic semaphore. Binary semaphore has a special example, as I told you, mutex. Mutex is a binary semaphore, but there is a difference between mutex and binary semaphore. What is that? Mutex requires the same process to be locked and unlocked, while binary semaphore can be locked and unlocked by different processes. Right? So there is a commonality and there is a difference. What is commonality? Mutex and binary semaphore are both binary, right? But in terms of implementation, there is a difference. Right? So that is the critical difference. Why same try wait and same time wait is required? Yes, so they are just additional options, Surjit. Depending upon the, you can say, timing and the comparison, right? You can use them. But mostly in 99% of the programs, you will find same wait only because that serves the purpose, right? So anyway, if you are looking for the solution, same wait is the solution. Okay. Now let us take an example. How will you call same wait on a variable same1? Try to write that in the chat. Same wait on ampersand same1. Perfect. Right. So that is the syntax. Okay. As it expects the reference. Right. Good. Now only thing that is left is signal. Right. We don't have a signal function. We have same post. Same underscore post function. But before that, let us revise what same signal is doing. First step, it increments. Then what it does? Even after increment, if the value is still less than or equal to 0. If the value is still less than or equal to 0, what does that mean? There are one or more processes blocked, right? So you can only unblock one at a time, right? And as we know, if it is a strong semaphore, which is this, right? This semaphore.h gives you a strong semaphore. That means it follows first in, first out. Okay, so that was the concept. Now you can go to the main page, right, to refer to the syntax. Same underscore post. Just have a look at that for 2 minutes, then we'll proceed. Right? So just the name changes, concept remains same. Right? post, P-O-S-T, post. Okay, using initialization semaphore means we put the critical section to that semaphore. No. That is not the case, Anish. Initialization means you are just giving the initial value. Like in pseudocode, we were declaring like this, right? Semaphore S is equal to 1, right? We were declaring like this, right? But in program, we can't do that. We have to use a function. It does not have to do anything with the critical section. Right? So if you want to enter critical section, I have to invoke which function? Just before entering critical section, we have to call sam underscore wait function, right? And just before we leave, right, we call sam post, right? That is the concept. So are you able to map out the concepts of the theory with this implementation? Sam signal with sam post, right? Yes, that is the use, right? So first you have to declare a semaphore. That is the first thing. We declare a semaphore using that structure, sam underscore t, right? And the variable name, right? Second step is initialize the semaphore. Okay, that we do using sam underscore init. Third step, before entering critical section, you call sam wait. Fourth step, when you exit critical section, use sam post. Is that fine, Sanish? That is the process we follow. Okay, good. So now, your first task, right? You have to write the similar program which I had shown, right? Create an array of 5 threads or 3 threads. Okay. First, do it without semaphores, right? Write the program without semaphores, okay? And see if there are any problems or not. Are you getting the first point, right? Create an array of 3 to 5 threads, as I said, okay, with a shared global variable. Fine. Run that program without having semaphores. Okay. Observe and remember, whenever you are writing the programs for semaphore related concepts, you should not run it only once, because we don't know what dispatcher is thinking in background. So you should at least run your programs 5 times, right? If not more. Okay. So that will be your first code. Then, yes, sure. First I'm explaining and then I'll write. That will be fine. What is it? Yeah. So that is the first step. Write the code without semaphore construct. Then add the semaphores to the problem. Okay. And then solve the problem. Okay. Now I'm writing the aim. Right. And still if you have any query, you can just write that. Okay. Okay. So write a program for creating 5 threads which share and increment a global variable count. Thread should print the count value. Is that fine? Gurjit? Let me know once you refer. Yes, okay. So first do it without semaphores, just as I shown, right? And then use semaphores in the same program. And obviously there is no need to submit both the programs, right? The second program you need to submit with semaphores. I am leaving up to you how many semaphores you require. That is the first thing. What should be the value of semaphore? That also you need to decide. Okay. So 2 questions you need to answer by writing this program. First is how many semaphores are required to protect your critical section. Second, what is the initial value required? So try this out. I'm giving you enough time. Okay. We are starting with a simple program and then we'll go towards the next program, right? And you can use the same format which I gave you, right? Hello. I'm just writing that in the chat. Like this, right? Hello from thread, and thread 1, thread 2, thread 3, and so on. So first you let me know that without using semaphores, are you having the problem or you are getting the same output? So that you report in the chat, right? Once you write the program. So is synchronization actually required or mutual exclusion actually required or not? That's what we want to verify. Okay. Hello 3 multiple times, hello 4 and hello 5. Okay, so if you are creating 5 threads, you are getting same. Okay. Output is different all the time. Yes, yes. So that's what I wanted you to verify, that problem is present, right? Good. So now solve it, right? Others who can also write your status, what you are getting, so that I can know what are the different possibilities. Because we are not working from same lab, same machine, right? So there are multiple possibilities, right? Yes, you are getting correct order all time. Yes, Kaushal. Yes, that is one possibility. Are you using WSL? Okay, then what is the version you are using? Linux Mint. Yes. So in WSL, usually what I have found is uh, it prints the order properly, mostly, right? Yes, that is possible. What child is written, hello from thread 5. So it is actually overwriting, right? 3 and 5. Yes, yes, good. So depending upon different platform, different types of Linux, right? You will be having different kind of errors, right? That's what I wanted you to observe. And that's why I told you to write in chat so that everyone can see. So synchronization is required, plus mutual exclusion is also required. Agreed? We require both the things, right? Synchronization plus mutual exclusion. And that solution is given by semaphores. Now tell me, how many semaphores will be required? Or you can try and let me know, right? You have time. But always remember, when you are using semaphores, you need to call three functions: same init, same wait, and same post. No, that is okay. But ideally, Janil, the first line that you've written, where are you writing that? In the main function or as a global variable? Yes. Then there should not be a problem. Okay. So that is another question actually I was going to raise. Should we write the declaration outside and initialization inside main? Is that the correct approach? Or should we do both the things inside main? Remember, main is again a function, right? So if you are declaring the semaphore within the main function, will it be accessible to all threads? Okay, you are getting this error. Expected declaration specifier, or okay, your syntax is absolutely correct. There is no difference. Same underscore init, ampersand same one. Okay, that is all right. Strange. That should not happen. Which kind of Linux you are using? Okay, Ubuntu definitely should support that. As far as syntax is concerned, it is absolutely all right. Not required. Not required. But yes, you need thread library to be linked, right? Like if I write the syntax, is like this only. You don't need to link it to semaphore. So this can only happen if semaphore library is not properly installed, it seems, in your case. Otherwise, this should not be a problem. Okay, okay. You are adding that to semaphore, Keval? Yes, Janil, wait and you can try the solution given by Keval. Just, it might work. Yes, using semaphore, you are getting correct output means what? You are linking your program to semaphore library or not? Yes, Priyank, your error can be solved using hyphen p thread or hyphen lp thread. Okay, okay. Yes, so that is the same solution. You can try. Jen? Yes, should we close the semaphore after completion? Not required, child, because we don't have a close function as such. So it is not required. Okay. Hello from thread 1 all the time, same output. Good, Asti. So that means we have synchronized as well as we have provided mutual exclusion, right? So this is the correct output, exactly. You should run at least 5 times, as I said, right? And if all the time it is same, then it's a correct solution. Because see, we are leaving it up to dispatcher, okay? And that is why we don't know in which order they will be executed. Now, one more point. Those who have completed, are you using two for loops? Yes, Kaushal, I'll come to that point. Right? Let me just complete this part first. We are using different for loops. Right? For one for loop for creation, the second for loop for joining. Right? And as I discussed, that is a correct approach. Okay? If you remove the second for loop and if you take the join inside the first for loop, is it making any difference? Can you just try and let me know? That is, make your create and join come together in the same for loop. Okay? And then let me know. Yes, that's correct. It will execute in sequence. But there is an important thing that I want you to observe. Yes, Kaushal. So, in as I was saying, if you are getting correct output order always, that means right now your system is dispatching the threads in the same order as we want, right? But that won't be always, right? So that is why we have to think about a global problem, right? Okay, and that is why we are trying to write this code. Got it? Yeah. Okay. So serial output, same output. Yes, that's a correct observation. For one loop also, it will work correct. So actually, if you go with a single for loop, right, without semaphore, then also it will be fine. Think about that case now. Remove semaphores from your code and then go with a single for loop. Are you getting the point?
One follow by getting sequential, but then when I'm using two follow, one for thread and one for line, I'm getting random.
Yes, yes. And yes, let me go through the comments. Then also we are serializing only in semaphores. Yes. So basically, remember the concept, right? When I'm using create and join together, that means I'll be waiting for the first thread to complete, for the second thread to begin, right? So actually, you are doing synchronization in the code itself. Are you getting the point, right? So synchronization job is not to be done by semaphores, right? What about global variable sharing? Will it create any problem if I go with a single for loop and no semaphores? Yes, I'll repeat, single for loop and no use of semaphores. Still, are you getting the count variable incrementing properly? Let us try and let me know in the chat. Yes, I'll repeat, Urjit. If you are using single for loop and that for loop is containing create and join together, okay, and the output that you are getting is actually synchronized as well as are you getting the correct count values? That's what you verify once, right? The answer should be yes, right? Because what is happening? We are having only one thread running at a time, right? So is concurrency possible in that situation? Think about that situation. Is concurrency possible? No. Okay. So I'll just summarize whatever we have seen. We have seen multiple things, right? The first situation where we saw was create and join in a separate for loop. That creates a loop of threads, right? Or you can say a pool of threads. Sorry, not loop. It is a pool of threads. Inside that pool, you have number of threads. They can be dispatched at any point of time, even if it is a single processor or multi-processor system, right? That is one thing, and that is the situation we require ideally, right? The second situation says that if you combine create and join together, you will have a sequential execution, but then you don't need semaphores. I hope you agree, practically also. Yes? And you have verified that yourself. Right? If you are using create and join together, it is automatically synchronizing itself. Right? But that is not serving the purpose. Agreed? What we require? We require a pool to exist, right? So that your OS can have better efficiency in case of parallel computers. Right? So I just covered this thing so that you can see the comparative details. Okay. All of you are clear to this? Write your replies in the chat so that I can know. Okay, so are we good to go with the next program, right? I'm again repeating, the first program that you need to submit is what? Yes, sure, Sanish. I was going to do that only. Let me first finish the program definition, then I'll summarize, right? Yes, you need to write the program without semaphore, right? And then you have actually modified that program with semaphores. Is that correct, Urjit? So you need to submit the second one as your first program, right? The program which is having semaphore is your first program with this lab. Yes, that's correct, Keval. Right? With semaphores. Okay. Initial semaphore value should be 1. Yes, that is another point. Why we are keeping semaphore value as 1? There is a reason behind that. Because the first process or first thread that enters the critical section, right, will block the others. Yes or no? So only thread that gets executed first, right, will be entering the critical section. Others will be blocked. Yes, that is correct. Right. Okay. And another thing we found is the entire function is a critical section. Okay. Okay. So let me summarize. We have written a simple program, right? And we have found two things from that. First is how to find out critical section. That was the first question. Second question is how to protect that, right? And to protect that, we found that we require only one semaphore, right? Because the entire function is a critical section, so only one semaphore is sufficient. Initial value of semaphore has to be 1 because we want only one process or thread to be inside the critical section. Okay, is that fine, Sanish? I have summarized that in 4 lines. Yes, okay. Fine. Now, let me give you the next task, and that will be the major task, right? That is bounded buffer producer consumer. That is what we are going to write next. Okay. So let us refresh, right? Whenever you are having bounded buffer or fixed buffer, producer consumer problem, producer blocks on which condition? Producer blocks on which condition? If it is a bounded buffer, producer consumer. Think about that. Overflow, full buffer. In simple words, we can say full buffer, right? Now, producer will become unblock in which condition or in which situation? Producer can get unblocked by the consumer only. We all know that, right? Producer gets unblocked using consumer only, right? So whenever one item is inserted, right, at that time, producer will be unblocked. Okay. Think about consumer process now. When consumer gets blocked on empty buffer condition, yes. And when it can be unblocked by the producer, when at least one item inserted, right? Okay. So this is the scenario. You need to think in both the ways. Yes, item removed. I'm asking about consumer. Consumer will become unblocked. It was blocked on empty buffer, right? So when one item is inserted at that point, you will be unblocked, right? Okay. So next question is, where is your critical section in this program? In case of producer consumer, where is the critical section present? You all have my slides, right? You can open and just have a look at that solution. Wherever you are accessing the buffer, right? Wherever you are accessing the buffer, that is your critical section, right? Just before you use the buffer, enter critical section, and just after using the buffer, you come out of critical section, right? Okay. And how many semaphores required? Next question. For bounded buffer, I'm not asking about infinite buffer. You can even look at the solution, as I said, right? You already have that with you. But it would be better if you think, right? Because that will be a good practice for examination. Right? What are the scenarios possible? Based on that, decide number of semaphores. Right? The first thing is we require mutual exclusion, right? For mutual exclusion, we always reserve one semaphore, right? Now, to block the consumer, we require one more semaphore, and to block the producer, we require the other. So total is three. Three situations, three semaphores. Okay? It is a direct ratio. So three semaphores. And what we name them as S, N, and E. Right? N is number of items, E is number of empty slots. Right? And S is required for actual critical section. Right? Yes, mutual exclusion. That's correct. Right? Okay. So based on this, now let me tell you what about the program. That's what you need to take care. First question is how many threads you will create. So I'm going to keep the problem simple. You have to create one producer thread, one consumer thread. We are going with 1 cross 1 combination. Once you finish that, you can go with n cross 1. Okay, or n cross n also. But right now I want you to go with 1 cross 1. Okay. You will initialize the semaphore where? Inside main function or inside the producer or consumer functions? What have you done in the previous case? Inside main function. That's correct, right? How to format the output? Let me now give you that idea, right? So I'm writing the output format, which I expect from all of you. Right? So you should get something like this: produced item like this. You're getting the expected output. Wherever the producer produces the item, you should also capture its position. At which position of the buffer you are inserting the item, right? So produced item, what is the item produced? Definitely we'll keep integers. We won't go with characters, right? We'll keep integers and also keep track of positions, okay? And what about the stopping criteria of this program? So should we stop in any case? Or it should be an infinitely running program? Think about that situation. Until there is memory capacity available, actually, you should continue, right? So in both the cases, in producer and consumer, you will go with while one, right? So this program will be terminated when you terminate the process. Until that, it should go on, right? But wherever the buffer is becoming full, the consumer should block, and wherever the buffer is getting full, producer should block. Buffer size, yes, buffer size you can keep 5, right, Ronak, for example, so that you can see the output. Okay, that will be interesting to see and track the output. Okay, so that if you will keep buffer size 1 or 2, then it won't be easy. It won't be interesting to track. So are you clear with the aim? Aim is already given. It is a producer consumer problem. That is circular buffer. That's correct. So you need to use your modular logic. Yes, sure, sure. I'll repeat, Janil, once again. So what you need to implement is bounded buffer producer consumer problem using one producer, one consumer thread, right? And the program should continue indefinitely until you terminate. Because producer should keep on adding the items unless the buffer is full, and the consumer should keep on consuming the item unless the buffer is empty. Okay, and use that as a circular buffer so that wherever the index reaches n, it again goes back to 0. You have written many programs in data structures like this, right? So, and you have enough time. This can be easily implemented within maximum 1 hour, right? Not more than that. Okay. So just follow the pseudo code. Okay. Remember, in this program, it is important to interpret the output. Logic is known to you. Right? Important thing is you should be able to trace what you are seeing in the output. Okay. And the output, I think, as I told you, you should get like this: produced item and consumed item, right? And one more question: will you have the output in this format only? Produced item 1 at position 1, and then consumer will run next. What happens if producer keeps on running for some time? Is that possible? That is, you might get produced item 1 at position 1, produced item 2 at position 2, and one more producer. And then consumer comes. Again, two producers run because buffer is still having space. Right? So we are leaving that up to dispatcher. Dispatcher will decide. Okay. But what we need to take care? Overflow and underflow. That is the important part. Okay, now I'm leaving it up to you. Yes, why n is used? Surely. Yes, Keval. So basically, n is used for blocking the consumer process or consumer thread, right? Suppose current value of n is, how do you initialize in the algorithm? Have you seen that? What is n's initial value? It is 0, right? So that means initially there are no items, right? So if the consumer runs with this condition, then it will immediately block, right? Because we don't know who will run first, producer or consumer, right? So to handle that dynamism, we are using n, right? And same logic applies to E. E maintains lock on producer, right? Okay, good. So even you have any doubts in pseudocode, you can raise that in chat, right? It's a good chance that you can refresh the concepts. So start with a simple array of size 5. Okay. Keep on adding the items from producer side. Keep on removing the items from the consumer side. That is the basic logic. Okay, I've put one question in the chat box. Just go through that. What will be the order of thread creation? Create twice, join twice, or create, join, create, join? Think and write the answer, because that you need to decide, right? Okay, Keval has given the second, the answer. So others also go through this, and you can even try to find this practically, right? You are already implementing. Yes. So there are multiple replies. So it will be better you if you verify, right? Practically. In the end, we'll discuss the answer, right? Just keep this in your mind while you are programming. You can also relate with the simple program which we have written earlier. That should give you the answer. Okay, first is working. And what about second? Did you try that? Yeah. Okay. And any problems with that? See, in general, what we can say is we should create a pool of threads, right? And in the previous case, we have also seen that. Yes, on the producer produces, right? So that might be the case, right? So ideally, you create the threads, put them in the pool, right? And then let the dispatcher decide. So in that, if you go with that logic, ideally, what is the correct order? Produce, produce, and then join, join, right? Because see, if you are going to create n producers and m consumers, then in that case, again, you will require for loops, right? So you will require separate for loops for each condition, right? So in general, what I should say is we should go with creation first separately and joining separately, right? That is how we'll be able to achieve the general thread advantage. In this case, actually, thread advantage is not achievable, but that should be the standard programming practice, right? Yes. So have you completed and observed the output, Priyank? Are you able to get the proper count incremented? And another thing is, are you getting the buffer full in any case? That is, are you getting five producers running at once sometimes, and then consumer getting a chance, or you are always having uh, producer consumer as a pair? If you are having producer consumer as a pair, that means you are doing create join, right? Because see, you are waiting for the producer to terminate and then consumer will start, right? Then actually there is no meaning, right? So ideally you should go with two times create producer, create consumer, and then join for producer, join and consumer, join for consumer, right? That is the approach by which you can actually see the behavior, right? Because if you are not, if you are waiting for the first thread to terminate, right, then again it will be a synchronized behavior as we have seen in the first program, right? Okay, so how many of you have completed? Yes, Priyank has completed, Hasti has completed, I can see. Just write your status. Okay, PPCCPP, that's fine. And it can vary, Janil, right? Yeah, because it depends upon dispatcher again, right? So how many times it dispatches your thread, either producer or consumer, we can't control, right now. Okay, Yash has completed, fine. Janil, I guess you have also completed, right? Okay. Okay, Jaydev has completed. Nice. Nice to see that you have completed before time. Fine. So if you want to change this code to uh, infinite buffer producer consumer, what change you need to make? Infinite producer consumer problem, infinite buffer, that is, right? Which condition you can lift now, or which constraint you can lift? Producer should not block, actually, right? So you don't need E. That's correct, right? N is still required because the consumer should not run on empty buffer, right? S is also required for mutual exclusion, right? So those who have completed can make this small change, right? And try out the infinite buffer one, right? That will be done within 5 minutes, right? Yes, yes, Asti, I'll repeat. See, right now what you implemented is bounded buffer, okay, which required three semaphores. Now, if you want to implement infinite buffer, right? So in that case, you can keep a very large buffer size. Right now, you are writing a program, right? So we need to define some buffer size. So let us declare some large buffer size, right? And then let producer proceed with its job. Okay, so you need one less semaphore, right? As per the solution we have seen in class. You can do this using two semaphores only. One will be N, the other will be S. Remember that from the class sessions? So are you clear with this? Yes, yes. Okay. So one thing should be clear to all, that is, if we know the syntax, right? If you have the pseudocode with you, you can easily implement. But what if you are just given the description and then you are supposed to write the solution first and then find out the critical section? Okay, that can be challenging. Right? Given this description only, first thing is you'll have to find out the algorithm or steps. Then you need to find out number of semaphores required, right? Then you need to find out initial values of semaphores. So at least these many steps you require for an unknown problem. These are classical problems, what we are studying right now. And there are many applications of each of these problems. Right? So now as you are used to, we can discuss the readers writers problem in the next lab. Right? As you are used to the syntax, so the only thing remaining is the concept that I will describe in the next lab in first 25-30 minutes. Then you can invest your time on coding that, right? So at least one more lab will have on semaphore still. Then we'll go with deadlock concepts. And the submission deadline for this is next Sunday, right? That is after your sessional. Your sessional will end on Friday, right? So deadline is next Sunday. I'm extending by one more day. And make sure that those who have not submitted for earlier labs, do that before the sessional. Right? Submit your pending lab work before the sessional up to lab number 7. Right? For infinite buffer, you need to maintain in and out pointers. Yes, yes. In the same way, Priya, what you are doing in this way. And again, see, as a programmer, we cannot assume infinite available memory, right? So you need to declare some large value, right, for the buffer capacity, right? So that is up to you whether you want to maintain pointers or without pointers, like you do in a circular. In this case, circular won't be possible, so you will have to go with some kind of logic, as you are saying, right? Okay, it's good to see that many of you have completed this code, right? Fine, so we can end this lab over here. If you have any other queries, you can send me an email, right? Okay, have a good day ahead. These slides are already there with you, right? For this problem as well as for the deadlocks. Right? Tomorrow we'll continue with the remaining concepts. For Q2, which is Q2? Are you asking about producer consumer, Jenny? Yes, yes. So producer consumer, you need to submit bounded buffer, and infinite buffer is an assignment question. So it is optional, kept optional, not compulsory. So two programs. One is thread synchronization, the first one, global variable synchronization, and the second one is bounded buffer producer consumer, right? If you have completed that right now, you can submit it. Right? I already posted the assignment. Fine. So let us close this meeting.